Hello guys, welcome to another episode of Paris and Baz Cast, where we bring to you new guest speakers to talk about topics that impact property management, sales and finance. Today we are joined by Kashyap. Hello Kashyap.
Hi Anmol, how are you?
How are you? Thank you.
Good.
So Kashyap's joining us from B&A Valuers to talk about residential valuations, what the different types of valuations are, what factors are considered when determining a value of a property, and one very important topic of capital gains tax valuations that if you have an investment property, you want to tune in for this one. So thank you so much for your time. We'll get this started, I guess. You want to take on?
Yeah, just to start with, just a bit of an introduction about yourself.
Yeah, sure. My name is Kashyap and I am from B&A Valuers.
Yeah.
And B&A Valuers established in 2012 and I have about 19 years of doing evaluations experience. I specialize in residential, commercial, industrial and also plant and equipment valuations.
Yeah.
But today I will be more focusing on residential property valuations.
Yeah.
Which is at the core for a lot of mum and dad investors.
That's right.
Yeah, and it applies to a lot more. Yeah, a lot of people.
Yep. So just to begin with, we'll touch on like the different types of valuations.
Yes.
I think if you want to start with that.
Yeah, as everyone would know that the most common valuation that everyone knows is a bank valuation.
Yeah.
And I won't touch more on a bank valuation side because I don't get involved in that type of valuation. But apart from bank valuation, there's an insurance valuation of a house and a site improvements. There's strata unit entitlement valuation. If you guys are aware of that, if any strata property is there, earlier all the strata unit entitlement has been calculated on the basis of how much floor area one occupies. But the recent changes in the strata laws, unit entitlement is calculated based on the market value of each unit.
Wow, okay.
Right, okay.
So the higher properties, obviously, if there's a penthouse and
yes, would have more unit entitlement than one having a sort of lower value.
That's interesting.
Okay, so
there you go.
That's a big change,
yeah. Even strata insurance valuations, strata laws are pretty much very strict on insurance valuation of the building. And as per law, they have to get the valuation at least once in a 5 years time from the independent valuer. So that's a very critical part if you are living in a strata building.
So replacement value.
That's right.
Yeah.
Apart from that, we provide valuation services for stamp duty purposes. So when that is required, when father is transferring property to son or mother is transferring to
any related transaction.
Any related transaction, stamp duty valuation is required. Most important part of the valuation that I do is the capital gains tax valuation. And when that is required, when any primary residence is being converted into an investment property. At that point in time, or investment property into a primary residence, at that time, capital gains tax valuation is required. Because when you sell in the future, you need to know what's the base value to calculate the capital gains tax liability.
Absolutely, I think that's definitely.
What I have seen that mom and dad investor who does their tax returns by themselves, they are not aware of such exercise. And when they sell the property, they have a big chunk of money and they don't realize that they have the capital gains tax liability. So what I would recommend to speak to accountant when they make any such changes or when they sell the property, go to accountant, speak with them what sort of a responsibility they have towards that taxation.
I think where the major mistake is made when a person is living in the property and then they make that into an investment property, that's when the valuation is done.
That's when it's not being done.
And that's when it's not being done. And then when they sell that property in the future, they have to go back and get it revalued at that point in time,
which is harder.
Which becomes a little bit of a mess because you've got to do more market research.
Yeah.
As you were saying.
So we can do a retrospective valuation, but that valuation
may not be
becomes
accurate.
It becomes a little bit expensive because we have to spend a lot more time. And many times we have seen that we don't get access because some third person is living in a property. We don't know what was there inside back in, so like when they converted that primary residence into investment property.
So it's very important once you're shifting your principal place of residence to an investment property to get your valuation done.
Get your valuation. I
Non-negotiable.
think that's definitely key.
Okay,
and what are some of the elements that determine market value of the property? What do you consider? What are the factors?
Majority of our residential valuations are carried out on the basis of sales comparison approach. That is, we have to consider at least 4 recent sales. It has to be within 3 months sort of a time period. so that we are considering all the sales which are in the current market scenario. If there are no sales, like earlier this year, I was involved in quite a few properties. There were no sales of comparable nature within 3 months' time. So at that time, we have to go beyond the 3 months period to get the comparable sales.
And then do you allow for the movement in the market? So if it was a 6-month prior and the market has changed?
If market has changed, we have to, in our analysis, we have to allow a little bit more if we are doing valuation in a better market conditions.
Okay.
So it's a little bit conservative then, you could say, or?
No, so like if sales we are considering occurred in a bad market, and we are valuing in a sort of a growing market, then we can say that sales that have considered is 6 months old. Since then, market has grown
this much. And you'll be able to do that. Now, one of the things that we find often in a lot of the unique properties that we sell is that there's not a lot of comparables of the exact same type. So how do you treat those?
We have to look for the comparable sales. We have to find comparable sales. We may not find comparable sales in the same suburb. We have to extend our research to surrounding comparable suburbs.
And how far is that reach? Is there a determined like a kilometer radius, or it just depends on what you're looking?
It depends upon the comparable properties and comparable, I would say, neighborhood. Then only the valuation what you are doing.
Sometimes that can be tricky because if you're in a particular suburb, once you cross the boundary, sometimes the value drastically.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the same with here, for example, like, Bella Vista to Bella Vista Waters. So you'll be comparing Bella Vista Waters to the Castle Hill, to the West Pennant Hills property.
Becomes a bit tricky.
Price points.
So again, so like when we do valuation, we compare what was property when it was built, what's the land size, what was the sort of a topography, and what are the sort of a planning point of view, whether property has a swimming pool, the one that we are using as a comparable sales, has that similar feature or not. So
Right.
And in terms of the quality of the build, of course, like if it's built by a builder versus owner builder, does that make a difference?
Absolutely. So when it becomes easier for us, that when we are valuing a project home, it's easier planning wise. It's almost sort of, I would say, identical. But when it is architecturally built property, we have to look for the property of a similar nature. Otherwise, valuation can go sort of wrong.
What we have seen with the market dropping considerably recently, with the valuations changing, it's hard to sometimes tell the customers this is the valuation. We're contesting a lot of valuations at the moment, but that's the nature of the game.
Again, so like even we as a valuer, we speak to several agents. We speak to them to see how the market is tracking in that sort of a space. We speak to not only one agent, couple of agents, to get how is the interest of buyers in the market, to get a better understanding. It's more of a market-driven valuation.
It's hard to sometimes point the pulse on the exact figure. Especially in the changing market.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the times, and I know you mentioned you can't really comment on the bank valuations, but from our sort of observation, a lot of the recent sales that we've had, the valuation from bank perspective, they are taking what is the contract price, or more often than not. So they're not valuing more than that; they're valuing at that price. And I don't think we've had anyone less than.
Generally, I think the banks, when it's that contract price, that's what the bank values are. I think only when it's valued less, and that's when the bank values.
I guess like that's a sort of a correct observation. In some cases, even so, like when I speak to my other colleagues and friends, they do say that sometimes they find that contract price is too high. If they don't find any comparable sales, then they have to sort of reduce.
Put it down.
Put it down. They do that.
Okay.
But where the valuations are coming in low, I think, is in the apartment market and the unit market.
There is a bit of a stigma in that space because of the Opel Tower and Mascot Tower. People are thinking twice, I would say thrice, before getting into the unit market.
So but the values what we've seen, especially on the off the plan, they are coming considerably lower.
There you go. There's any case studies or anything else that you've like to share or anything?
Apart from that, we also provide valuation services for transfer of easement rights.
Okay.
We also provide valuation when a property is being acquired for the road widening or road infrastructure projects for the compensation purposes.
And how does that, does it differ like to a market value, so from a compensation point of view?
In land acquisition matter, market value of the property is a one component. On top of that, there are other cost is involved that government compensate to a private landowner being property privately been acquired. So it's not that vendor wants to sell that property as government wants it. The government pays
premium
market value
plus,
but on top of that any other additional cost that may incurred by the private landowner in living that property. So there's
and how do they take that? Like, is that something that the landowner provides, that this is for me to move, this is, or how does that get calculated?
Yeah, so once government decide that they want to buy this piece of land from the private landowner, and they start communicating with the landowner, government gets the valuation. Also, they ask private landowner to get a valuation done, and government pays for that valuation as well. So there's a good process is involved in that. There's a good negotiation is also involved in that.
Right. So there's a few things attached there. So a straightforward valuation basically.
So they basically
it's not just a market value, and it's more of there are 7 different heads under which the government provides a compensation. So market value is one component of that.
It's only one component.
So they can sort of ask for sort of the being able to move to another property, being able to find another property, so that can all be added.
all that sort of a compensation goes in there. So they try to make sure that private landowner is not, I would say, in a bad position.
Put undue pressure. Perfect. And what other ones were you?
Yeah, and I can say like more recently, what I have seen that private buyer when they go to the auction, they are not sure of how to bid in auction, so they want to know what a pre-purchase valuation looks like. So we provide a very extensive report in that space, so that they are sure that what property worth is and how much sort of they want to pay for it. So
obviously that happens before the actual auction. So you go in, you have a look, and you make that determination.
A couple of our customers have done that.
And what about desktop versus actual inspection? So there's is that mainly used in bank valuations, desktop based valuation?
I'm not sure about in a bank valuation.
That you do that,
but desktop valuation we do it in a very limited circumstances. Against like when there are all the information is available on RP data. It becomes a little bit easier. When access is not available, at that time we can only do a desktop valuation, but there has to be some data somewhere, whether in a real estate or on a RP data, to get all the relevant information to do a proper valuation.
And how do you account for, say, if there's like for example, we've had a number of distressed sales, or if there's a related party transaction, that particular property would not represent market value. Can you allow for that? How do you know if that is a distressed sale, or is that something that you take into account?
Yes, when we look for the market comparable evidences, we look whether that property has been sold by an agent or it's a private sale. If it is a private sale, if from the vendor and seller's sort of a name matches, we try not to consider those sales in a valuation. And we only consider sales which are sold by the arm's length transaction. That's right.
Because that would be interesting, and that's what we've had comments on, is that if there's been a distressed sale, or even what do you call it, the mortgagee sales, you can find out which ones are mortgagee sales from your
very rarely. If it is marketed like a mortgagee sale, then we can
otherwise you can't.
Otherwise,
so there's a bit of a grey area there. Because so I mean, a lower price point dictates the market value for the rest as well, from a purchase point of view. So it affects that. So it makes it harder. Perfect. Well, thank you very much. Is there anything else that we've missed?
No, that's
Pretty
about
much
it. No,
everything.
thank you very much for the
Awesome.
opportunity. It was nice speaking to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining in. Is there any to contact you, or if there's any specials at all that with you?
Yeah,
with your
again, so
company?
like our sort of a valuation fee varies from the purpose to purpose
Yes.
valuation and
Yeah.
also from the property to property.
Yes.
So like we do a stamp duty valuation, and when we do a valuation for the litigation matter,
Yeah.
our reporting gets drastically
Different.
changed. So
Yeah.
it's but we usually ask our client to provide us a property address and
Yeah.
the reason for the valuation,
Yeah.
and we prepare a fixed fee
A
code
fee for that.
them.
Yeah.
But I'm sort of for giving me this opportunity and being in front of your audience.
Yeah.
I'm happy to give your sort of audience at least 10% discount.
Lovely.
So yeah.
Just as long as you mention Paris and Bazcast, you'll be able to get that 10% discount. Perfect. Thank you very much, Kashyap,
Thanks,
for your
Anmol.
time.
Thanks, Gurudev.
Thank you.
And do join us again next week, next Thursday at 3 p.m. with another guest speaker talking about property management. So stay tuned for those details, and we'll see you guys next time.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.